Let's start with the escalating violence between Palestinian militants and Israel. Despite international pleas for calm, the situation on the ground continues to deteriorate with casualties on both sides. 2 Israeli women have been killed after more rockets were fired from Gaza today. These are some of the latest pictures from those attacks in the last couple of hours. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel will increase their intensity and frequency of attacks in Gaza. The Israeli Defence Minister has approved the potential call-up of 5,000 reserve soldiers. Meanwhile, the Palestinian armed group Islamic Jihad has said that 3 of its commanders have been killed. The Gaza Health Ministry says at least 26 people, including children, have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. Let me just show you the live pictures coming into us. This, the skyline looking over Gaza City, and you can see a huge plume of smoke there. And of course, we've seen over the last 24 hours a real ratcheting up of the violence from both sides, with claim and counterclaim, but rocket attacks going both ways. And these are the live pictures over Gaza City. Well, Yolande Knell, our correspondent, has all the latest from Jerusalem.
At least 8 buildings have been directly hit in the past few hours, one of them an empty school. And then there were these 2 women who were killed, one in a house, the other an older lady in an apartment building, we were told by the emergency services. They said that dozens of people had also been rushed to hospital for treatment just with this one barrage of rockets that came in. It's the first time in a couple of years that Israelis have been killed by Palestinian rocket fire, and one man that I was talking to in Ashkelon told me that he really thought that this would now escalate things. Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system is getting most of the launches that are coming from Gaza. That's what we're being told, and certainly the people in Ashkelon talk about how they get the air raid sirens going off very frequently. They can see the Iron Dome in action overhead, but crucially, of course, the Iron Dome does not get all of those rockets, and they can prove to be deadly. The IDF, in a conversation with journalists earlier, was talking about this military operation potentially going on for days. That's something that they are ready for, we were told, and similar messages coming through on the Gaza side. So that is very worrying for people. The IDF have also been told that they can continue by their top brass to go after militants in Gaza. And certainly we have seen that they consider they've had some success on that score. We were told earlier that the IDF believed they'd killed 15 Palestinian militants in this latest heavy exchange of fire. And they also said that they had targeted an Islamic Jihad hiding place, and they had managed to assassinate the head of Islamic Jihad's special rocket unit, a man called Samah Abed al-Mamluk. That was put out in a joint statement with the Shin Bet Internal Security Agency earlier. And so that could also lead to more retaliation from within the Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group.
Well, that was Yolande Knell. I mentioned in the introduction Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He has been speaking after today's attack and today's casualties. Let's have a listen.
We are at the height of a campaign. Since yesterday, the IDF executed hundreds of attacks on Hamas and Islamic groups in Gaza. We targeted their military commanders. We hit many of their key targets. And we will further intensify the power of our attacks. Hamas will be getting blows it will not expect.
Well, that was Benjamin Netanyahu in the last couple of hours. I've also been speaking with Israel's ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hotovely, about how Israel will now respond.
As you know, Israel is under fire. Israeli cities were under barrage of rockets. And today, unfortunately, this barrage of rockets cost in life. 2 Israeli women were killed from this horrible, horrific attack of a cruel terror organization, Hamas. I can tell you that this is our duty as a government, to protect our people. And you can see today in Ashkelon, people feel like they're under fire on a daily basis. Think about this rocket that was shot to Israeli school. Think about those kids. We prevented the death of kids only because we didn't allow them to go to school. So normal life are not at the moment in Israel because Hamas is shooting rockets and attacking Israeli cities and Israeli civilians.
Now, of course,
So
we've
we
heard
need to
those
protect them.
appeals for calm from the international community. Benjamin Netanyahu just saying just now Hamas will be getting blows it will not expect. There's also been pleas for a ceasefire. Is that now completely off the table?
Well, you need to understand the background. Israel tried to do anything in its power to de-escalate the situation. Hamas is using, in a very cynical way, the political campaign he's been doing because the Palestinian Authority have decided, after over 10 years not having election in the Palestinian leadership, they've decided to cancel election. Hamas didn't like that fact because they wanted to get into power.
Let me just rewind, because we've seen the violence escalate over days now, and it started in terms of the rockets after Israeli forces went into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They fired stun grenades, rubber bullets. You must have known how provocative that was.
Actually, you're turning the story. What happened is, and it's actually documented, and you can see it in BBC videos, there were youngsters that been incited by their leadership, both from Hamas and from the Palestinian Authority, to start hurting Jews on the Western Wall and in Jerusalem in general.
But to go into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, a place of worship, the holiest site, you must have known that would be provocative.
Matthew, I'm saying again, the only provocation that was done on Temple Mount was from those people who were piling rocks in order to throw them on the Jews that were praying in Western Wall. Israel police, the only reason it was there was to protect law and order. And you need to remember, for many years, Muslims were praying during Ramadan, freedom of worship. Israel always let Jews, Muslims, everyone to practice their religion beliefs.
Well, that was Israel's ambassador to the UK talking to me a short while ago. Now, Hamas, which runs Gaza, said the rare targeting of Jerusalem was a response to what it termed Israeli aggression, especially at Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the most sensitive sites in the city. Well, earlier, hundreds of Palestinians were hurt in clashes with police around the mosque. Now, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti is the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative and was in Al-Aqsa Mosque when the Israeli security forces attacked.
Well, there was no justification whatsoever for the Israeli army to enter a prayer place, a mosque. They entered while people were praying. They attacked the prayers with stun grenades as well as with metallic rubber-coated bullets. And they even started beating people, including some of the first aid providers who were trying to provide help to the injured people. These attacks have been repeating several times. Just because they wanted to evict people out of the mosque. And they even attacked the people who were inside the mosque yard itself with tear gas bombs, which caused severe suffocation for some people, especially, as you know, there are many elderly people who are suffering from chronic diseases and serious respiratory problems. Eventually, yesterday we had 330 people injured, and many of them were sent to hospitals. About 64 of them were seriously injured, and at least 4 people have lost their eyes. Same thing happened 2 days before, and in my opinion, there is no justification for this violence from the side of the Israeli army. And this, of course, attack has precipitated many other reactions. 26 actually now Palestinians have been killed, including 9 children, including a disabled child. I don't know if these children were legitimate targets for the Israelis. They say they target Hamas and they target rocket fire, but actually they are targeting children and civilians mainly. Anyhow, this should happen as soon as possible, but strategically. We can have repeated cycles of this problem unless the issue of military Israeli occupation, which has lasted for 54 years, is resolved.
Well, before we move on, let me just take you back, show you the live pictures, the scene over Gaza City, and still, we saw it a few minutes ago, that huge plume of smoke, developments through the hour. So we'll keep an eye both on the pictures, the detail, the situation there on the ground, and bring you any updates as they happen.